Good morning. Uh, some time ago, there was a discussion about your individual journey of transitioning to DMEK, and you would probably hear a lot of stories about how each individual surgeon transitioned to DMEK or new surgical procedure. Well, for me, the journey was especially poignant because I do believe that any surgical procedure has something that I like to call the W curve. That is, you think you know pretty much everything about the surgery, and then you realize that you're having a lot of complications. And then, when you actually start to go up the W, is when you realize how you can fix some of these complications. And then you become overconfident. And then, once again, there is a slide. But once you've figured that out and you've hit bottom again, then there is only one way up. And I think that's been a really unique and remarkable journey. And I'd like to share with you a few special reasons why I think DMEC is not something I'm scared about anymore.
Well, to follow up on what we discussed till now, just go back in time to look at the timeline. So in 2006 was when I really started lamellar surgery with endothelial keratoplasty, and I did my first DSEK. And 2008 is when I did my first DSAEK, when we got the Boria system in the eye bank. Later on in 2013, by this time, I'd figured that DSEK is probably going to be the only endothelial keratoplasty that I'll ever do in my life. But then DMEK came about, and in 2014, I figured that I'll try my hand at DMEK as well. I had some initial success, and you could call this beginner's luck, and few of my cases seemed to turn out quite well. And this is when I realized that there is a little more to this than just the first few cases. I almost stopped in 2015 after a series of complications and detachments that I was having. And one case that actually strikes me even today was this pediatric surgeon that I did DMAC for in 2015. I was pretty confident by then, but then it didn't work. He had a detachment, and I had to convert him to a DSEC. And I was feeling really bad about what I had done and about the fact that I did not give him the expected outcome. Which is when I started to think again about the W curve that I'd mentioned a little earlier. So when you start a surgery, you start by exploring to see how this is going to work out for you. And eventually, you realize that with time, with all the complications that you have, that this is not such an easy job. But then you figure out some of the ways to make sure that surgical outcomes are better. And then you become overconfident and you think, oh, this was not so tough. And this is when your second slide begins. And then most people are ready to give up. And this is the stage that you actually need to contact someone and have a mentor, which is what I did. And in 2016, I took a course for DMEK surgery. After this, it's only been one way up. And I'm pretty confident with DMEK today, and I can say that about 90% of my surgical cases for endothelial keratoplasty is DMEK, and about 10% is DSEK. So if you look at how DMEK was done initially when I was learning DMEK, and this was in 2015 and 16, early first, second quarter, most of the maneuvers that I was doing in DMEK surgery were actually intraocular. You'll see I'm trying to open up the graft by slight taps, but not too much. But I'm trying to inject fluid mainly inside the anterior chamber. And this was one of the problems that I was facing. So this is a man that I probably will credit with changing my DMAC curve. This is Gerrit Melles, probably the father of endothelial keratoplasty. Brilliant person, amazing surgeon, and a really nice human being. And in the 3 days that I spent with him, I think I pretty much figured out what I was doing wrong. And he was very patient, explaining exactly what I was doing wrong and what I needed to change. And that is when I started changing into DMEK, what I call 2.0, where most of my maneuvers became outside the eye and not inside the eye. And success eventually followed as well after this. So I realized that the keys for success in DMEK surgery is case selection. You cannot choose cases that are difficult for your first few cases. And this is a difficult situation because most of us believe that you want to choose a patient who might have a poor visual prognosis because he will not complain after surgery. And this is wrong. You should choose a patient where the outcome potentially is going to be good. And this is where your learning curve for DMEK should start. You need to make sure that you should be able to see inside the corneal, inside the anterior chamber, and see your maneuvers and see your graft relatively well, and this should be maintained throughout surgery. The block should be good, and you should aim for a soft lobe. You cannot have upthrust and have your tissue be thrown out of the anterior chamber because of the upthrust that develops during surgery. One of the most important things about surgery is to ensure that you put an alphabet on the graft that you can help identify the correct side. I use a P for obvious reasons. You can use whatever letter you want, but these are readily available as markers from various companies as well. You need to practice flipping and unfolding of the graft, and this you can do in the wet lab as well, but you can also practice this during surgery. But make sure that you understand the dynamics of the tissue before you actually start surgery. And finally, need to figure out how to manage air inside the anterior chamber along with your graft. So I think the difficulties during transition, you can surmount graft preparation easily in about 10 cases or less. Stripping DM under air, if you're doing DSEK, this should not be difficult, but a max of 5 cases. You learn how to deliver the graft appropriately and you'll be a perfectionist in 5 cases. It'll take about 5 to 10 cases to understand and to also predictably unfold a graft and orient the graft appropriately in maybe about 5 cases or so. If you have folds in the graft, you'll be able to manage these in about 5 to 10 cases or so. And these are things that you'll figure out by yourself with time. So this is not something that you need a lot of training for. But eventually, if you look at the outcome of patients who have had DMEK surgery, you will realize that this journey will be completely worth it. I wish you all the very best, and please do not give up. And if you need any help, please do reach out and we're ready to help you. Thank you.